Hello, hello, hello. Good morning. It's Cooler Talk with Rhonda and me, Cynthia Luna. Rhonda is experiencing some technical difficulties today. I think her computer's forced her into some updates or something. So she's been working on it for the past 90 minutes. So good on her for like being up so early and getting started with all this at 8 a.m. So bright and early this Thursday morning. Hope you are doing well. Today's topic is called Being Open to Opportunity. I think she just called it Being Open to Opportunity, but actually the topic today was born from a sort of sidebar conversation I had with Rhonda last week. And we had called it at the time, Being Open to Opportunity in Spite of Desperate Times. And actually, when we had gotten to chatting about it, I was reminded of an event many years ago, gosh, a little bit more than 10 years ago now, when my husband and we moved to Maui. And we were very excited about this change, but we also, I had moved there without any opportunities. My husband had moved there actually with a consulting job that kind of went sour very quickly. And so, we were a month in on this project. It was kind of a first time situation where, he realized that the folks who were hiring him to consult for them, they weren't completely on the up and up about their deal. And so, there we were stranded in Hawaii. And I put stranded in quotes because part of us was like, well, we actually moved all of our stuff over here. So we don't really have anything to go back to the mainland for, and this is paradise. Like, why don't we just try to figure it out? By the same token, I was like, I was not expecting this. I'm a bit more of a planner, and I definitely, I went into a desperate place. I was like, holy S, I need to find a job. We need to find a place. It turned out that it got really bad very quickly. So this thing fell together within the first 60 days or something with this consultancy with my husband. Very quickly. And around that time, we noticed that there was a lot of activity in the cottage right next to ours. And they would have late night parties pretty much Monday through Sunday. And it was really sort of cramping my job search style. And so at some point, we had to go to the landlord and say, I think there's some kind of funny business going on in the cottage next door. And he's like, oh, no, they're jewelers or whatever. And as soon as he said a jeweler, kind of tipped me off that smell that I'm smelling is metallic, but I don't think it's jewelry. That's an awful lot of jewelry that young fellow was making in that cottage. So we actually quickly moved out. We gave in, the rest of the month's notice. And so now we were not only out of income, but we also were out of a place to live. We basically had the rest of the month to find a place to live so that we could, continue to figure out our next steps there. Anyway, so I was in a very desperate place. My husband, though, he has this ability to just kind of keep his eyes on the prize, know what it is that he needs. He was we both knew, listen, we need to find a place to live and we need to find income, period, a job, whatever. And he, both of us, we, made calls, we interviewed, we sent out our resumes, etc. And he landed something pretty quickly. It wasn't a high-paying opportunity, but we were okay with that. I mean, we were ready to just sort of do something that was within our skill sets that would, sort of make ends meet and get us situated in our new place. And I would say within a week of the month ending, a woman called us who said, listen, I know somebody in this neighborhood that's down the volcano, so actually closer to town, closer to with better access to like the rest of the island or other parts of the island. And they said, I know this woman who's renting out, like she has a little cottage on her property, would you be interested? And we said, yeah, I think so. And she's like, it's small, it's just a studio, but it has everything you need. It has its own bathroom. It's, a bed with sort of a kitchenette off the side, a bedroom with a kitchenette off the side. What do you think? So we were like, well, let's check it out. So we contacted this woman, and she basically gave us the apartment right away. I mean, she basically said, sure, when can you move in? And we were like, tomorrow? So basically, that's what we did. We gave her a check, deposit, first month's rent, and she actually, waived that, like those final 3 or 4 days. She's like, why don't you just move in over the next couple days? And, I'm just so glad to have it rented out. I had parking, everything. It was the perfect situation. We actually wanted, what we had, which was further up. It was close to where my husband was consulting. So it had all of those tick boxes. It was a 1-bedroom. It was very close to where he was working. But everything wasn't really working. And when like things weren't jiving anymore, it started to get pretty desperate, pretty difficult actually. And so, we were kind of like laughing at our luck, like how did this happen? And just as soon as like we moved in and we managed to pay the deposit and the first month's rent, he ended up securing a job. So they called him back and they were like, when can you start? He was like, I could start right away. They had him start the next day. So we already had, regular income, a place to move into. We could have, and in fact, I think we did start, sleeping there like 2 days later. Once we had packed up all of our stuff and, moved it into our new place, that's where we were. And, our spirits like completely lifted, but actually I realized afterwards that his spirits didn't need lifting. He actually was very sort of secure in where we were. He did not feel desperate, not in the way that I did. Whereas like I was very much struggling with those feelings of desperation. Like, I don't think it's going to work out, not having that belief that like things do work themselves out. Those were in the early days. And so it was kind of a learning moment for me because shortly after that, there was definitely a lot of relief once we moved into that new place. And then he, landed the job like bing, bing, bing. And about a week later, or I would say a week into being in that new place, I finally got a call back as well to work with a timeshare resort. And I had never worked in a timeshare. I've always grown up in cities, not places that people would spend, a significant amount of money to vacation in. I mean, DC, it can be a touristy city, but I don't know if there's any timeshares in DC. So that was definitely not an area that I was strong in. But I said, what the heck, I'll give this a whirl. And I actually had so much fun in that job. The story continues because, I actually had a good time, and there was a palpable shift in my belief in terms of the way the universe worked. And actually, while I was there, I was turned on to the law of attraction. And that's where I found out about being able to sort of get a real grasp on how you're feeling and how to adjust your feeling to what it is that you want to manifest in your life. And so this is why I like the topic that, as we had coined it last week, being open to opportunities in spite of desperate times. Because what I really should have done in those days, and thankfully my husband was, in full alignment with where he was headed. I really should have shifted out of that feeling of desperation and the, oh my God, like, how is this going to work feeling, into the, yeah, it's going to work. I just need to be very clear about what I want and feel very good about how I'm going to be there. And so I wanted us to sort of look at this topic. I actually kind of like the juxtaposition of both ends of this topic, being open to opportunity in spite of desperate times. And, the first part of the sentence, open to opportunity, makes you think about openness. I even see a horizon in my mind's eye. Doors are opening. There's a light feeling. It feels like valleys and sunflowers and things like that. And then you see, in spite of desperate times, oops, there's a fly in my room, which is all about like closed feelings. There's a darkness that descends over things. There's definitely a sense of closure, maybe also a bit of fear and scariness. And, and I actually looked at the word desperate. And the word desperate, it means loss of hope or surrendering to despair. And, usually like when you're desperate, you're desperate for something to change. You're desperate to get out of the situation you're in. You've surrendered to despair, but it's to the point where like all you can see is, the dark cloud that is descended on your moment. So in both cases, what I was thinking about was both cases actually spark in a person the willingness to take a risk. However, when you're open to an opportunity, the feeling of that willingness to take a risk is very different than if you are in a state of despair or if you are desperate. Then that risk-taking action, or the feeling that you have associated with that risk-taking action, is scary. It's a closing off feeling. And in fact, there's probably a lot of inner turmoil about like, is this the right step for me, right? Which is what I was experiencing at the time. Like, can we risk everything? I mean, we've already handed in our notice. Like, was that really a smart thing to do? I was looking back at the apartment that I was going to leave, because I've always been about having a roof over my head. Homelessness has never been an option. I like toilets that flush. I'm not even really into camping, that sort of thing. And so I think what I wanted to highlight with this thought and about the willingness to take risk from both sides, whether it's being open to opportunity or being desperate for change, it's that there is a willingness to take risk for both. However, consider the feeling that's driving your action. And if you have that feeling of fear, of contraction, then halt. Don't do anything. Don't fling yourself into interviews. Don't send your resume out. Don't knock on doors. Don't, tug on people's shirts. Like, anything that you do in that feeling is going to just attract more of that feeling. What you need to do is release that feeling and have that feeling of hopefulness. Keep your eye on the prize of what it is that you're really looking for. Now, in the case of my story, I could cheat because I had a husband who just, he was not really worried about the prospect of sleeping in the car maybe 2 nights or something. Like, it just did not occur to him in the same way that I was kind of belaboring those thoughts without being mindful of the reality that, like, we still had a roof over our head when we submitted and we still had, 10 days to go before before we'd have to move out of the space. So he was just very focused on what he wanted. First, we need to get a place. The same time, we also need to get, he also needs to get a job. And that was that. There were no conflicting or confusing thoughts distracting him from that vision. And that clarity of vision is so important because it is what drives clear action. And I'm actually speaking to all of you who are in affiliate marketing or who have their business out of their homes. You'll hear about Grant Cardone's, I think it's called like the 10X effect, where he says that you have to sort of put in 10 times the action. But more important is you have to have that feeling that this will not fail. You have to step out of the distracting yourself from the, let me think of all of the bad things that could happen, and just really zero in on, no, this is the good that can happen. And so I had I really could benefit from, that single-mindedness and that clarity that my husband had at that time. And so we moved into this place, and I worked at this timeshare for about 6 months. And I was learning a lot about actually real estate in Hawaii, because actually the sale of a timeshare is the sale of a property. It's just sort of like a time of property, or a time of occupation of property, over a period of time. So I was learning little bits and bobs about real estate, and somebody planted the seed in my mind, like, maybe we should look at a condo or something. And I know my husband, he was like, yeah, maybe we should just do that and see what's around. So imagine 6 or 7 months into having moved to Maui, having moved to this island, we were already flirting with the idea of buying a property there. Mind you, we had just like freshly moved into this cottage on this wonderful woman's property. We really enjoyed ourselves there too. We had just moved into that property, a few months before. Now we're looking at apartments and such. I reached out to a real estate agent. Hey, Rhonda, let's get you in here. So, oh, there we go. There she is. So I was just saying that I was reaching out to a real estate agent in Maui. And we talked for, I don't know, a few times. And on our first visit touring homes, I found our dream condo. And I think the moral of this story was I was in the good feeling place. So I was talking about earlier, because you probably missed it because you've been troubleshooting computer issues, this open to opportunities topic in spite of desperate times, and how both moments will call upon you a willingness to take risks, but one of those, you're open to it. Oh, I've lost her for a hot second. And in the other one, you're not open to that risk. And it's about taking that shift into that good feeling place. The other thing that I wanted to just sort of say, now that we've sort of focused on the feeling aspect of it all, is try to visualize when you've gotten into that good, open to opportunities place, and into that open to opportunities mindset for whatever it is that you want to do. When you've gotten into that place, then visualize what that new place is like without thinking about or comparing it to your present situation. Don't compare it to your present situation. Just think about the goodness of that new place, what it is, how it is that it will make you feel, how you feel in this moment as you're thinking about that future place. And don't think of yourself as separate from that future place. You're actually like thinking of yourself in that future place at this very moment. And that's a key distinction when it comes to visualization practices for manifestation. So that was my very long story about being open to opportunities in spite of desperate times. How are you doing, Rhonda?
I'm very well, thank you.
You're in a troubleshooting sort of place today, I'm guessing.
Oh, without a doubt, without a
With,
doubt. Um, and thank you so much for sharing. I'm sorry I missed it, but I'll be able to listen to it later. I did have a couple suggestions on spotting an opportunity,
oh, yeah.
and I borrowed this from Success Magazine. So, as you all know, everybody can solve problems, and at its core, entrepreneurship is simply problem solving. Um, it's hard, but nobody's stopping you.
Hmm.
One of the first things you want to do is to position yourself to see opportunities. I'm sure Cynthia talked about that. It's all around us all the time, but we need to prime ourselves, set our mindset to see and be open to spotting opportunities and then taking action when we see them.
Right.
This process is different for everybody. There's no
Mm.
exact formula for it or exact recipe for it, um, but it does always include being present wherever you are.
Yep.
Um,
It,
so, like for example, if you're hanging out in coffee shops, look around, strike up conversation with strangers, look for details you would normally miss because you weren't looking for them,
hmm.
um, and note those observations. So, what you want to do actually is look for problems. Look for a problem that needs to be solved. Um, it might sound simple, but usually when you see a problem, just like in life, it's the symptom of a larger underlying issue. For example, you might notice the coffee shops losing customers because of
Hmm.
10-minute or 10 plus person lines. Um, it might not be understaffing that's the issue. It might be an espresso machine that's just too old and not working like it should. Now, McDonald's is famous for their ice cream machines going down, and it's so disappointing to pull into line and want something, luscious ice cream or a sundae or a cone, and that sorry, or a milkshake.
Yeah.
Sorry, ice cream machine is down. Last year it seemed to be a regular problem, and as you know, I travel around a lot, so I go to different McDonald's for a quick little snack or ice cream because it's usually pretty fast. So look for those problems. See if there's something. There are symptoms out there that that you can solve.
Hmm.
So the next step then is to identify a solution, and this is not the time to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to do that, but we can take a bad idea or a good idea and make it better. Um, so throw out ideas for, well, what was I going to say? Uh, and you've listed your problems, um, and don't limit to yourself to the obvious.
Yeah, I think at the core, what you're talking about is something that I was brushing on earlier, which is being open, right? So there's
I'm
definitely a different feeling between being open and being shut off and desperate. Like there's a clenching feeling in your core when you're desperate or worried or upset or whatever, but there's a different feeling when you're open.
yeah,
And just being able to calibrate that.
you want to prime your brain to observe, identify, and solve. All those alternative ways of thinking will become second nature
Hmm.
and slowly improve over time. So that's it in a nutshell for me.
Yeah, and there's something to be said. The words observe, identify, problem solve, they can be very analytical, as opposed to say, also just a word which I would say would be like just like be open in the sense of a sense of curiosity. When you say, "Oh, well, I wasn't expecting to have to, not get ice cream. Like, could there be another option?" And you might find out about something else that you love at McDonald's that, maybe an iced coffee would be just the thing that you were looking for, or maybe somebody will point you in the direction of another place just right next door that also has some similar offering. So there's just a difference though in feeling when you go out into the world closed off to possibility and when you go out into the world open to opportunity. Yeah. So I think we have pretty much said everything that there is to say about being open to opportunities. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Rhonda, or before we?
No, actually, I'm just typing in a couple of things here um, in the chat box.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'm like really impressed with your, get to it and stick to itiveness, having troubleshot computing issues, and then you just sort of like popped in here with a full agenda. I'm glad you got to share with us. And now she's also adding comments to our to our program. So
I know.
you have entered the day with an open to opportunity spirit.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. That's probably an understatement. I had my updates to Windows scheduled for like in the middle of the night. Um, well, guess what? This is the second time in a month
Mm-hmm.
at 7 in the morning I turn on my computer and bam,
Yeah.
don't do anything. We're updating, and I was scheduled to be live at
9:30?
Eastern time, and I'm in a live monitor, and it really got me in trouble.
Oh,
I couldn't be there. It's the whole program is designed
yeah.
um, to be live video, and the best I could do was I had to go to my cell phone, and the program doesn't work on the cell phone. Um,
Oh, that's a
so
bummer.
manually typing into the chat box so people know someone's there because the video box was just blank,
Right.
and no one was available to take over for me on such short notice.
Yeah.
It was not a pleasant situation. Um, so someone suggested turning off my updates. I'm going to have to do that because this has been happening too much lately.
Uh-huh.
Or leave my computer on,
On.
but
Yeah.
turn it off at nighttime.
I had to I had to actually like make one of those decisions. So I do turn off my updates, but when I get the notice that there's going to be an update or that there is an update happening, I'll see if I can fit it in my calendar. And I would rather control when I do because I had that happen to me once leading up to a deadline,
Yeah,
which murder.
yeah, and the volunteer coordinator was ready to pull her hair out. Poor thing. But yeah, I didn't even get a notice saying that an update was coming.
Yeah, no, that's not cool.
Anyway, with respect to identifying opportunities, we'll summarize this with, priming your brain to observe, identify, and solve. Look for alternative ways of thinking, and then it'll become second nature. Um, Position yourself to see opportunities, look for a problem, and identify a solution.
Yeah, and I would say before you actually take action, until this becomes second nature to you, consider the feeling that's driving your action. If you're acting out of desperation, probably it will take you into a difficult place. If you're acting out of, hope and optimism, it will take you in a different direction. So try to gauge that feeling that would be driving your action as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Well, with that, it looks like we hit our time. Thank you again, Cynthia, for coming up and getting things rolling while I was trying to find a solution. And really appreciate it. That's another advantage of teamwork.
Makes the dream work. High five. Other way. There we go. Yeah.
High five. You guys have a good week. And please, if you're watching this later during the replay, please type your comments in on how you have identified opportunities.
Yeah.
You spot them. We would love to know, and I know our watchers would like to know too.
Yeah, we got some pretty brilliant viewers. So see you next week.
Okay, look forward to it. Bye-bye.
Ciao for now.